The purpose of having an event on competition analysis with realistic behaviour was to try to further our progress towards thinking about competition and behaviour. In the past, they've been different academic disciplines. They need to be brought together if you're to understand financial markets well, because financial markets both have interesting competition aspects and interesting behavioural aspects.
If consumers just behaved in completely scatty ways, then it probably wouldn't help us a great deal. But actually they behave in fairly systematic ways that are nevertheless mistaken, but the way in which they work systematically can be taken account of in terms of modelling then what happens in markets.
To begin to talk about what Behavioural Industrial Organisation means to me, perhaps I should, just for clarity, say that we have been using what we're treating as a rough synonym, which is competition analysis with realistic behaviour. And what it means to me is almost a key to unlocking some of the mysteries of finance. We see in financial markets competition that has many dimensions that are almost baffling and non-textbook, that are not well aligned with what we think of as effective competition. And at the same time in financial markets we see large numbers of consumers who have fundamental misunderstandings about what they're buying, an inability to assess the contracts that they're signing, and also an inability to find out in practice for a very long time, or possibly even ever, whether the contract they signed was any good. If you put all these things together, there's clearly a risk that markets will function on false focal points, and people will buy lots of stuff they really don't need or actually won't help them. And we want to shift those markets away from that equilibrium to one in which people are buying the right stuff at the right price.
Behavioral Industrial Organization, it means taking our standard economic questions about how markets are going to work, how are people going to behave in markets, what's going to happen, but making the assumptions realistic. Right? Not assuming that an individual always does the best thing, never makes a mistake, but put real people into the models.
An understanding of behavioural economics and how consumers make decisions can improve competition. Traditionally, we may have looked at just firm behaviour, but now understanding how consumers make decisions can sort of drive competition from both sides of the market, from the firm side and the consumer side.
The FCA should hold events like this, in my view, to bring all the different perspectives to the table. The usual economic perspective, and I'm an economist, is let the invisible hand do its magic. But we need to recognize the limits to that argument, and we need to understand the psychological underpinnings of those limits. How consumer confusion, how consumers who have the wrong understanding of the products, who miss the hidden prices, who don't understand the follow-on costs, who don't perceive the way what they thought they were getting isn't exactly what they're getting, is actually part of the picture too. And when you fold in all of that psychology, you get a different understanding of how these markets work, and suddenly you have a richer way of modeling and ultimately regulating these markets, I think, to benefit society.
I think from today generally I'd really like people to have a better understanding of behavioural economics and how it can feed into how we can intervene in markets to make them work competitively in a way that's actually better for consumers. We've learned a lot about interventions that can go wrong and make things worse.
One of the key messages I want people to take away today is that an intervention that helps an individual consumer make a better choice won't actually necessarily make that consumer better off at the end of the day once you take into account all the other changes that are going to happen in the market. So helping a consumer avoid an unarranged overdraft fee won't actually lower the amount they spend on banking fees if banks increase other fees to compensate. So we need to think through what is going to be the response of firms to work out if there's going to be a net benefit to consumers at the end of the day.
I'd like people to understand that the invisible hand doesn't always work as advertised, and that sometimes markets can actually be unproductive, can be dysfunctional. Sometimes competition doesn't work that well, and in those cases we want to think, maybe not jump to a conclusion, but think about how a different regulatory regime may actually improve the market's function.
The purpose of today's event was to send signals to the outside world and also send messages to our internal stakeholders. So in terms of the outside world, we wanted to show that we are engaging with extremely difficult issues in the most professional way we can and trying to, in the jargon, harvest the knowledge frontier. In terms of our internal audience, we wanted to give people practical ideas and practical insights about how they can do their jobs better.